Growing a business is kind of tricky right now. Supply chains are squeezed, tariffs and trade policies are dynamic, and cash flow, it's tighter than ever. You need clarity to come out on top. Without it, you risk falling behind. If only you could hop in the DeLorean and see the future, right? Thankfully, there's NetSuite by Oracle. NetSuite has real-time forecasting to help you move ahead with confidence. This is your AI-powered business management suite and the #1 cloud ERP. Trusted by over 42,000 businesses, NetSuite brings accounting, financial management, inventory, and HR all under one roof. It's your single source of truth, giving you the data and control you need to move quickly. And with AI built in, you can automate the busy work and focus on strategy. NetSuite helps you see what's stuck, what it's costing you, and how to pivot fast. If I were running a business with a lot of moving parts, I'd use NetSuite for full control over everything. Tame the chaos with NetSuite. If your revenues are at least in 7 figures, download the free ebook, Navigating Global Trade, 3 Insights for Leaders at netsuite.com/SPI. That's netsuite.com/SPI. You spent months building towards launch day, but when the clock hits 0, your site crashes. Bots swarm, and loyal fans rage on Reddit. That's not good. Fanfare was built to stop that. Fanfare is the drop platform made for high-pressure moments, stampede-proof infrastructure, verified waitlists, and bot filters that actually work. Instead of refunds and rage, you get retention and revenue. And that sounds great to me. Your next launch shouldn't be a gamble. Get Fanfare's 5-step hype drop playbook and learn how to bulletproof your drop at fanfare.io/playbook. Again, that's fanfare.io/playbook. Hey, I get it. You've worked really hard to build up your business and it's doing great. So great that you need help now. The most important thing for your business is to hire the right people to support it. So how can you find amazing candidates quickly? Easy. Just use Indeed. When it comes to hiring, Indeed is all you need. Stop struggling to get your job post seen on other job sites. Indeed Sponsored Jobs helps you stand out and hire fast. And with Sponsored Jobs, your post jumps to the top of the page for your relevant candidates, so you can reach the people you want faster. And it makes a huge difference. According to Indeed data, Sponsored Jobs posted directly on Indeed have 45% more applicants than non-sponsored jobs. And it's one of the largest databases of job seekers, too, giving business owners access to a wide range of candidates. And one of the things I love most about Indeed is the job alerts feature. I get notified when new candidates apply. There's no need to wait any longer. Speed up your hiring right now with Indeed. And listeners of this show will get $75 sponsored job credit to get your jobs more visibility at Indeed.com/smartpassive. Just go to Indeed.com/smartpassive right now and support our show by saying you heard about Indeed on this podcast. Indeed.com/smartpassive. Terms and conditions apply. Hiring Indeed is all you need. So I was on a business trip recently and I took an Uber from the airport. And just for fun, because I knew about the special guest that we have on the show today, I asked my Uber driver, hey, have you ever heard of a guy named Harry Campbell? And my Uber driver goes, Harry Campbell. Isn't that the Rideshare guy? And I go, yeah, the Rideshare guy. And that's exactly who we have on the podcast today. Harry, also known as the Rideshare guy, helps people who drive Lyfts and Ubers, or people who are thinking of getting into ride sharing, how to have a better experience, how to make more money, how to have a better career. I had him on a recent episode of Tactics in a Tesla, and I had to get him back on the podcast to talk about how he did this, the tactics he's been using to grow his blog and just serving 200,000 uniques a month. It's pretty crazy what he's doing. So we're going to get into all the things today. But first, let's cue the music. Let's do this.
Welcome to the Smart Passive Income Podcast, where it's all about working hard now so you can sit back and reap the benefits later. And now your host. He has 24 hours in his day just like the rest of us, Pat Flynn.
Still using a copy-paste website? Break the template trap with Framer. Whether you're overwhelmed by traditional site builders or frustrated with cookie-cutter designs, Framer gives you the freedom to create a site that's professional, polished, and uniquely yours. Framer is the design-first, no-code website builder that lets anyone ship a production-ready site in minutes. It's free to start, allowing you to browse hundreds of pixel-perfect templates or even design something on your own on a totally blank canvas. Add bold animations like appear effects, text effects, parallax scrolling, scroll animations, looping animations, and much more in seconds. The built-in AI handles the heavy lifting, generating starter layouts, and can even translate your entire site to any language. Ready to build a site that looks hand-coded without hiring a developer? Launch your site for free at Framer.com and use code SPI to get your first month of Pro on the house. That's Framer.com, promo code SPI. Framer.com, promo code SPI. Rules and restrictions may apply. With running your own business, legal questions always come with the territory. Like, can I use this contractor agreement? What do I do if a client doesn't pay? Am I even structured the right way for taxes? Instead of Googling your way through legal landmines, imagine having a law firm ready to address your business's legal needs without the sticker shock. That's what you get with Legal Shield's small business plans. Legal Shield helps entrepreneurs access real legal help on contract reviews, collection letters, business formation guidance, and even help navigating IRS audits. Members can schedule consultations, upload documents through the app, and get support from a provider law firm that knows small business laws in your state. Plus, consultations on taxes or trademarks help you stay ahead of potential problems. And if a client is late on a payment, Legal Shield steps in with professional collection letters so you can protect your hard-earned revenue, all for a fraction of the price of hiring a lawyer on your own. Go to LegalShield.com/SPI or call 833-570-9980 to learn more and get big business legal support without a big business budget. That's LegalShield.com/SPI. Thank you so much for joining me today in session 322 of the Smart Passive Income Podcast. I'm very happy you're here with me today. Now, make sure you stick around because not only are we going to get into some tactics that Harry has used to grow his amazing brand here, and he's got a book that's coming out and all these amazing things are happening. But we talk about some strategies that I would use if I was an Uber driver related to starting my new business. So I wouldn't be competing with Harry. I would be creating my own business and use Uber as a strategy for how to actually make that happen. So stick around. We're talking about that at the end and some other great things. So let's just dive right in. Here he is, Harry from therideshareguy.com. What's up, Harry? Welcome to the SPI podcast. Thanks for being here, man.
Thanks for having me on. It's definitely a pleasure.
You know, you have a really, really cool story. You went from workforce to just kind of driving Uber to now being the Uber, Lyft, Rideshare guy. I mean, that's your website, right? The Rideshareguy.com. And you help, how many people, like, honestly, I didn't even ask you this the other day. How many people are visiting your website? Like, what's your reach at this point?
Yeah, so I mean, to the website alone, we're usually getting around 200 to 250,000 unique viewers a month. And we also obviously have YouTube and the podcast and a new book coming out. So lots of different mediums that are probably reaching a lot of drivers or potential drivers.
So that's who you're serving, drivers, like the people who, when we call an Uber or a Lyft, they're the people who pick us up.
Yeah, I mean, definitely. I think probably everyone has heard of Uber or Lyft by now, but what everyone may not know is that a lot of sort of just everyday drivers like you or like me sign up to drive with Uber and Lyft. And since Uber and Lyft didn't exist 5 years ago, they really have no idea what they're doing. So a lot of them often go to YouTube or Google or even Facebook and are looking for information. And that's hopefully where I come in.
And so you started out as an Uber driver. Tell us how you got from there to like being the guy that everybody goes to now for how to make it work.
Yeah, no, definitely. It's been sort of a long path because I was also sort of sitting in your listeners' shoes or seat right now listening to this podcast because, you know, when I first started my blog, I was really, you know, a big fan of yours. And, you know, it was honestly, I have to say that it was a big inspiration for me. And I was literally in the shoes of a lot of your listeners right now, dabbling with little projects here and there. And I actually started driving for Uber and Lyft while I was still working full time as an aerospace engineer for Boeing. And I just wanted to try it out, just wanted to check it out.
Okay, I was going to ask, like, did you need the money from Uber to, I mean, aerospace, I mean, that's, I'm sure comes with a pretty good salary.
Yeah, no, I think I was making pretty typical. I had about 5 years experience, so I was making pretty typical salary, probably around $60,000 or $70,000 a year. And so, which is a pretty typical salary. You know, it's very, you know, it's definitely good money and probably above average, but, you know, nothing that's going to make you a millionaire in, you know, a few years or anything like that. But I was happy, I was content, but I definitely knew that it wasn't something I was going to do for the rest of my life. I mean, I had people, my cube mates, there was someone who sat across from me who worked in that same building 35 years ago for a different company. And he would kind of come in every Monday morning and complain about this and complain about that. And I wasn't quite at that stage yet, but I definitely knew that, hey, there's other opportunities out there. And that's what I'm going to, you know, keep exploring and see what works. Okay.
So you drive Uber. And if, for those of you guys who are interested in driving for Uber, it's a good side hustle. I mean, some people make, I mean, how much could you make driving Uber or Lyft, Harry?
Yeah, I mean, I think the way you described it is perfect. It's a great side hustle, and especially honestly, for people that are entrepreneurial in nature, and I think your audience specifically, there's so many benefits beyond the money. I mean, of course, we all sort of a lot of drivers do it for the money, but at the same time, it's going to be practice for running your own business. You're going to get that customer service side of things, talking to people, dealing with people. The average driver, so we surveyed over 1,100 drivers last year, and the average driver reported making about $16 to $17 an hour before expenses. So drivers are responsible for their own expenses like gas and depreciation. So you can imagine that's probably, that's why there's so many Uber drivers out there with a Toyota Prius, right? Gas is a big expense. You have to definitely think about that. But also, you have to, Pat, you and I are both business owners. So obviously income is one thing, and you can talk all about how much money you're making. But if you're spending just as much, then your net is zero, right? And so that's kind of what I get into as far as, why it's important and kind of understand that income and expense side of things.
That's cool. And this is the kind of stuff you talk about on the Rideshare guy, the rideshareguy.com. And also, Harry and I took a little car ride yesterday in the Tesla for Tactics in a Tesla, which, if you don't know, is sort of a series of videos that I have on my YouTube channel. So you can check that out. We'll embed the video and put a link to it in the show notes. So make sure you stick around. We're going to have a lot of cool things to share with you guys, and we'll have all the links and the resources in the show notes at the end of this. I'll mention the URL. But come on the car ride with us. You'll learn more about, we actually start that conversation with I'm interested in becoming an Uber driver, hypothetically. What do I need to know? What are the minimum requirements? What is it like? So make sure you check out that.
Did I convince you, Pat? Did I convince you to become a driver?
It's like plan, I would say, Q in the whole list of things that I'm interested in doing.
Sounds good.
But I'm still on plan D or whatever it is right now. But anyway, go ahead and check out that video if you want to learn more about that and see Harry and get to know him a little bit more. But we're going to get to know him and his business even more right now. So you drove for Uber, and then at what point were you like, I need to create a blog about this and just share this information?
I mean, to be honest, so I started driving for Lyft and Uber right about the same time, about 4 years ago. And honestly, within the first week or two of driving, it kind of hit me like a light bulb went off in my head. And I started thinking to myself, this isn't, being a rideshare driver, it's not rocket science, but it's also not the easiest job in the world. It's kind of the ultimate combination of customer service, running your own business, dealing with drunk people, all of that fun stuff, and figuring out how to make money, right, while you're doing it. And that's kind of the cool thing for me. I feel like I got really lucky with the timing that I just happened to start driving for Uber and Lyft at the right time when these companies were still growing. And at the time, there were some Facebook groups with, Uber drivers and Lyft drivers, but there wasn't anything authoritative yet. There were no YouTube channels. There were no blogs that I could find, at least. And so for me, I looked at it as kind of an interesting opportunity. Here I am trying to figure it out myself, and I'm not an expert yet, but it's also not the toughest job in the world. And I'm pretty sure with some hard work and some diligence, I can figure it out, figure the best practices out, and figure out how to make a lot of money doing it, or the most money possible, and really just share my experience with people. And so that's kind of what I did from probably about, like I said, that first week is really when it kind of light bulb went off in my head and I started brainstorming about ideas.
Cool. So you're brainstorming about ideas. You're getting the bug, right? The entrepreneurial bug, like we all get. But then you execute. What was execution like for you? You created a blog. What was the first week like after you set that up for you?
Yeah, so I mean, I was working full time for Boeing at the time, and we were living, in Orange County. And so I believe basically really kind of what it looked like initially. Obviously, I was sort of doing it all in my spare time or my downtime. My wife was in med school, so that definitely helped because I had a lot of free time. I think it would be a lot tougher to start later on if I had a wife who was always wanting to do stuff, or if I had kids or anything like that. So definitely timing wise, that worked out. But really, the first steps that I took was, I believe that I know I saw this advice somewhere. Honestly, it may have been you, Pat, or it may have been someone else, but I remember I wrote down 50 article ideas because I wanted to make sure that this was something that I could write about forever, or not forever, but that I could write a lot of content about. And so that was really kind of my first step. I wrote down at least 50 ideas and, just started thinking about, hey, is this something that, I'm going to be able to cover and I won't get bored of quickly? Mm-hmm.
So you write down these 50 ideas and they come to you. Right. And then,
oh yeah, you know how I got all of these ideas? Honestly, it was out driving. So that was kind of the cool part. I mean, I'm out driving, and I had some articles about how to sign up and how to do this more logistical stuff. But a lot of my best article ideas came from while I was driving. I would end a ride and then really quickly go into Evernote and write down a bunch of ideas. It's
That's
like,
cool.
Hey, how to handle a drunk passenger, and this guy did this wrong, I did that right, and so I was honestly just scribbling notes. I had a pen and paper too that I would take notes in sometimes too. So it was really that that was kind of the cool thing, that it was all, I wasn't an expert yet, but it was all coming from my firsthand experience.
So you start writing these articles, and I mean, what's that like for you when you're writing something to a blog where there's nobody visiting? What's keeping you going, and at what point did you finally start to see some results?
Yeah, well, so I guess I haven't always enjoyed writing, but I did have a little bit of blogging experience before. I started a couple personal finance blogs, and I had done some freelance writing on travel. And so I had always written, though, about topics that were interesting to me. And, I wasn't extremely passionate about driving for Uber and Lyft. It was just something that was kind of new and exciting to me. And so it wasn't like a lifelong calling or anything like that, but it was definitely something was interesting. And so for me, it was really just about kind of detailing my experience. And I think I enjoyed the writing aspect in general. So I don't know, obviously you want people to read your stuff, but that wasn't necessarily kind of, I felt like that I could go and write a bunch of articles. And at the end of the day, if no one read it, it wasn't the worst thing in the world, because it was sort of a fun exercise for me. And so I think that's definitely good advice for someone that's starting out. You have to sort of think about, now there's different mediums, there's blogs, there's podcasts, there's YouTube, and sort of which medium do you enjoy, especially at the start. You don't have to do everything, but which medium do you kind of enjoy creating content in? Because I think that'll help you go a long way.
How did you finally start to get traffic to the website?
So honestly, at the start, I used pretty much anything and everything that I could think of. So I went onto all those Facebook groups and answered as many questions as I could. I mean, I probably answered thousands of questions in a pretty short amount of time, in a few months, 3 to 6 months. So I was just every day going on Facebook. And, really, I basically, my strategy at the start was thinking, okay, where are drivers right now and how can I find them? How can I reach them? There were local meetups happening. So Lyft was actually sponsoring local meetups between drivers. So it wasn't a ton of drivers, but it was, maybe 10 or 15. But I also noticed that these were really hardcore drivers. And so I was hoping that, I could go there, meet with them, interact with them, see what challenges they were having, write about it, maybe share my articles with them. Maybe they would share my site. I also noticed that Lyft was publishing blog posts. And so I remember that I would comment. I set notifications so that I think I was using IFTTT, that service. And so every time they published a blog post, I was getting a notification, and then I would go and be the first comment. And, so a lot of strategies like that were sort of not scalable forever, but it was really kind of anything and everything that I could muster up.
Well, that's what you need to do in the beginning, kind of like, you were hustling and you were grinding. Exactly. And I like that when you said, you went into forums, you didn't say, I went into forums and I just started spamming. Right? Yeah. Or I went into forums and I started sharing my website. You went into forums and you answered questions. And this is so funny. So I was telling you yesterday, this is exactly how my Green Exam Academy website got put on the map. I went into forums and I just started answering questions, and I just became naturally over time the guy that everybody went to for that advice. And the same exact thing happened to you, and then they eventually went to your website.
Yeah. And I mean, I think one of the that strategy is probably wouldn't work as well today, but also, I think it's really also about standing out, because, if people are all doing one thing and, let's say today there's people answering questions and then linking to their articles that they have further information, you don't really stand out doing that. I would almost say that you could probably stand out by just answering questions and maybe only linking to your site 1 out of every 4 or 5 answers. So you become a little bit more well known as the guy or the girl who is always answering questions, but they're not trying to promote their stuff. They're not trying to push their stuff. People will find you because of, you're still promoting it once in a while, but it's kind of, you stand out, you look different than everyone else. That's always kind of been my approach to these types of, more what I call like the hustling, the grinding promotion type tactics at the start.
Had you ever questioned like, I don't know if I should keep going with this, or were you kind of all in no matter what?
I mean, honestly, Pat, the way I looked at it was when I was first getting started with this, it was a combination for me. It was something that I was very interested in. It was something where I thought there was good business opportunity. And it also was something that I thought I could help people, because there were a lot of people struggling. And, to this day, I'm sure we can progress and talk more. But I mean, I get dozens of emails every single week, like I'm sure a lot of like you do, and I'm sure a lot of the listeners that are helping others. And honestly, that feels good. I would say that getting emails from people who are saying, even though it's just content, people say, I love your stuff. I can't wait to read your next article, or I can't wait to listen to your next podcast. I've even had people unsubscribe from my list, Pat, and email me and say, hey, I'm bummed that I have to unsubscribe, but I'm no longer driving for Uber. And I thought that was like one of the coolest emails.
Oh, that's cool.
Cool, good and bad, right? Because they're unsubscribing, but
that's awesome. I love that. And at what point when you started going, did you finally realize like, wow, this is a thing here. I need to go full time?
I mean, it was a while. So I did it for about a year with my day job and sort of doing it on the side. And, obviously towards the end of that year, it started taking up more and more of my time. And really what I think your next question, I think I might know what it is, so I'll answer it right now. But what kind of inspired me actually to leave my day job was that I got a media opportunity. And, once I started doing a lot of that hustling and that grinding, I started looking for other opportunities where I could reach more people. And media was a big strategy that I used in becoming an expert in the media. And I actually got an invite to sit down with Lyft's CEO on CNBC, and I had to turn it down because I was working. And I've never got that opportunity again. I got it.
Oh, you turned it down?
I had to turn it down because I had to work. I had like a very important meeting or something like that at my day job. I couldn't go. It was like a last minute thing. And they said, you'd have to fly up to San Francisco. That would have been a no brainer, right? To fly up to San Francisco and go on CNBC with Lyft's CEO and talk to him about what it's like to be a driver. And I had to turn it down because of my day job. And that kind of pushed me over the top.
I just quit that day. Sorry, guys. Can't make this meeting. I got to be on TV with the Lyft CEO.
Yeah. And what's ironic is that I've never gotten I've never gotten that type of, high level media opportunity since. I sort of figured, I'll probably get another one down the road, but nothing quite like that has happened.
Yet, even though you hadn't gotten another opportunity like that, here you are, incredibly successful. What is success? Like, the site is successful. Can you define that for us? You told us some of the numbers in terms of traffic. Like, how is it making money? How much money is it making? If you want to share, just
definitely.
Even range.
Yeah, no, I'm definitely happy to share. I think one of the things that I like about your podcast and all the guests you have on is that they are transparent. And it's not, I don't like just saying, here's how much money I'm making or here's how much traffic I'm getting. I sort of want to share the tactics of how it got there. And obviously it didn't happen from day one. So, just a couple quick stats off the top. We're usually, like I said, getting around those 250,000 uniques to the site. And then we also have a YouTube channel that has around 26,000 subscribers. Our email list is 52,000 subscribers right now, I believe. Use ConvertKit. I signed up with your link, Pat. So.
Thank you. Hey, thanks for that.
And I honestly, so, those are just sort of some top line stats, which basically kind of tell you, there are definitely a lot of people coming to our site every month, but that's probably, the first question that people ask me that aren't in the, kind of internet or working online sphere is, how do you make money? And how did you afford to quit your job? And how do you have people working for you? And actually, it's just a few main sources, but some of the ways that we make money are through driver referrals. So signing up new drivers for Uber, for Lyft. We also work with Postmates and DoorDash. And so that's sort of a nice source. That's about 30% of our revenue. And then we also do direct advertising. So this would be things like sponsored posts. We put a little ad at the top of every email that we send out. So we release 4 articles a week, Monday, Wednesday, Friday, and Saturday. And we actually put just a little simple textual ad at the top and bottom of our email. And that brings in alone about $5,000 a month in passive income.
That's cool.
Because it's very easy to set up, and we sort of just have continuously raised the prices sort of based off supply and demand. And that was actually, so I have one guy that works for me almost full time, and he handles a lot of those direct advertising deals. So the direct advertising is a big source. And another cool one that we discovered kind of by chance that might be cool to talk about is our insurance marketplace. So drivers actually need this little addendum called Rideshare insurance to be fully protected while they're driving for Uber and Lyft. And it's actually a new policy. And so we started off by just creating a resource for drivers, just explaining which companies are available in which state, because insurance is a state-by-state issue. So in California, it might be State Farm, Farmers, and Geico. Mm-hmm. But in Arizona, it's different states. So we just sort of created that database, very simple, just all textual. And, we have like a simple drop-down menu where you can select your state, but no fancy maps or anything like that. And insurance agents started reaching out to us and saying, hey, can we be listed on your marketplace? And I quickly discovered that insurance is usually a pretty high commission product. So now we have about 30 agents signed up across the country, and we have a couple national deals with Geico and USAA that basically we're sending leads to these companies, and we charge these agents anywhere from $100 to $300 or $400 a month to be listed.
That's legit. I want to. That's cool, because that's not an opportunity that you really kind of sought out or even expected.
One of the cool things that I always tell people is, honestly, if you can get to the point where you have the traffic, if you have honestly just the credibility, and if you have that authority, honestly, I think making money is the easiest part of all that. I mean, getting there to where companies like Geico are reaching out to me and saying, hey, we want to advertise with you, that is the tough part. But, getting to that point is the tough part. But that was what was so cool, is some of the monetization strategies we've discovered have just been from becoming a resource, from becoming, providing such great information that people are coming to us and saying, hey, we want to give you money. Now, taking money, I think, is a skill in itself, making sure that you're finding the right partners and, not saying yes to everyone. But we definitely have found a couple cool sources. We also have a video training course that we released that we sell about 20 to 30 courses a month, and that's $97 a course, and that's been selling for 2 or 3 years. So, 4 or 5 major revenue sources, basically.
That's awesome. Well, wonderful job. I wanted to dig in a little bit because you had mentioned that you have some team members that are helping you. You said you started on your own. Now you have a team. How big is your team currently?
So right now, I basically have 2 full-time people. So one content manager who handles all of the basically coordination, scheduling, editing, some affiliate work. And then I also have a guy in San Francisco named Christian who handles all of our direct advertising deals. So these are sort of like a lot of the big companies that we work with and partnerships that I kind of frankly don't want to deal with because, we'll hop on the phone and there'll be like 6 people on the other line. And so he handles a lot of that for me. And then just a host of writers. We have about 3 or 4 pretty consistent contributors on the blog and YouTube, and then 3 or 4 more that might only contribute an article every month or 2. And then your typical sort of VA who does 5 to 10 hours a week, web developer, all of the lawyer, all of that fun stuff, basically.
At what point did you start building your team?
Honestly, I started. I don't know why I keep saying honestly, but
I was like, are you lying to me at all? But now you're honest?
I'm not lying. I'll try to stop saying that.
No, it's funny. I interview a lot of people, and they always have for me, it's always, I always say awesome when I'm on another person's show. For some reason, I just happen to do that, but honestly, it's okay.
I'm sure I'm funny. I'm sure I'm going to get a comment from someone that says, why do you say that so much? So I'll try. You know
what? You addressed it yourself first. You did the Eminem 8 Mile move, and you've got it before they can say it.
Boom. There
Unless
we go.
they commented before they finish listening, which is, I don't know.
Not
if
good.
People do that.
Sorry, what was your question? It was...
when did you start building the team?
So I started building the team pretty early on because for me, I had experience doing content and I knew that I wanted to be releasing consistent content. So I started with 3 articles a week, Monday, Wednesday, and Friday. And that's a lot of content for one person to do.
Yes.
So pretty quickly on, I did those 3 articles a week at the start for the first 3 or 4 months because obviously I wanted to kickstart things and I wanted to get that out there. But I also knew that it probably wasn't something that I could sustain. And so I started seeking out contributors. And this was before I was making any money on the site at all. And so I couldn't afford to pay anyone, but I started seeing that there were some, I didn't have a ton of followers yet, but I had some that were pretty passionate about it. And some people that were basically sending me blog posts via email. I would write something and then they would write me a huge email response. I'm sure you guys, if you have a website, I'm sure you've gotten that occasionally. Mm-hmm. And a couple of them, I started reaching out to them and just asking them, hey, are you interested in guest posting? And so I found a contributor that way who actually ended up writing a weekly blog post for me and completely for free because he was passionate. He was a driver himself. And of course, I told him, hey, once I start making money or if I start making money from this site, I'm going to look to reward you and pay you for these articles. And it ended up that he actually managed our insurance marketplace. And I gave him a very healthy 30% commission of all the deals that the leads would come to me and he would just have to close them. And so it was pretty lucrative for both of us. And so it was cool that it ended up working.
But he wrote for you for free. At first.
He wrote for me for close to a year for free. And I ended up rewarding him very well. I think it was a pretty fair deal when it was all said and done. And after about 6 or 7 months, I found another guy who was one of my friends from high school who was a writer and, sort of an aspiring writer, basically reporter. And he was driving for Lyft to pay the bills. And he started doing our weekly roundups where we sort of round up the top news stories. And he worked for free too. So, really kind of what it revolved around. I'm not trying to take advantage of these people. people, but I was just looking for people like me who are passionate about it. And, I'm not going to give them equity in, a blog that may not be worth anything, but it was I was putting all my cards on the table saying, hey, right now I can't afford to pay you, but I think that if you're passionate about this and you like doing this, we can contribute a few articles here and there. And when I do have the money to pay you, I will.
Did you ever feel bad about that?
I didn't feel bad about it, to be honest. I don't know if that makes me a bad person, but I think that I was also working for free. So we were sort of, it wasn't like I would have felt bad if I was making a bunch of money and I was hiring all these people for free. But honestly, I thought that the business was going to succeed. In my mind, I was thinking that, hey, Uber is worth, at the time, they were maybe worth a few $1 billion, and every 6 months they were raising more money. I said, this company is going to be huge, and there's no one else out there doing content like we're doing, sort of that firsthand experience. We weren't just looking up these new products, right? Uber releases a new product, Uber Pool. We weren't just looking them up and writing them about it. We were going out and actually driving Uber Pool and seeing what it was like and seeing how good or bad it was, and then detailing our experience. And no one was really doing content like that.
That's amazing. Do you have a relationship with those companies, Uber, Lyft, and the others?
Yeah. So, what's really funny is that so when I first signed up to drive with Uber, you could refer other drivers and you would get paid. Honestly, sometimes you could get paid a lot, up to $500 sometimes for drivers in big places like Los Angeles, San Francisco. And the bonuses are still pretty high today. So you could make a lot of money referring new drivers. So there's definitely this incentive to refer new drivers. And I started referring drivers, but, I would more just drop a link at the end of all my blog posts. And I kind of learned from you and I know you talked about affiliate marketing in the past, and that, there's sometimes an incentive to oversell or over promote a really good affiliate offer. But for me, I was trying to build more of a long-term business, and I wanted to give people the realistic picture. And, I think if people want to sign up, they're still going to sign up. And that's definitely, been one of my goals from the start. I probably lost out on a little income in that first year because I could have referred more drivers. If I would have done more articles about, the best nights to drive and, highlighting, on New Year's, I made $1,000, you know what I mean? As opposed to I drove a week and I made, $400 or $500, right? Whatever it might be. Something that's just is more realistic. And so till this day, even today, I still use the driver referral program for both Uber and Lyft, although I suspect at some point they're going to try and make me switch to their regular affiliate program. But it's been kind of funny that obviously I do much higher volume and I don't have any tracking or any kind of sophistication. I just refer, just like any other driver would, but probably much higher volumes.
Do you know people at those companies, and can you call them up to get some insider information, or, what is that relationship like? Yeah,
definitely. So I definitely know quite a few people at Uber and Lyft. I've gone up to visit with the companies multiple times. I actually had a really cool opportunity last week where Uber had this big new announcement that frankly was a little bit of a dud for drivers. They were expecting something more, but it ended up being a new driver app. And the CEO announced it in Los Angeles. And Uber invited me on stage afterwards to ask the CEO about 15 minutes worth of questions and take questions from drivers. So I sort of moderated the panel. So that can maybe give you a sense of my relationship with Uber. It's a little complicated because I sort of, my site is for drivers first. And we've honestly been pretty critical of both Uber and Lyft in the past when, Uber had a terrible PR year in 2017 and we covered a lot of that. So I think that the people at Uber who sort of understand that, they're not a perfect company, like any other company, they have mistakes and there's a lot that they can improve. I think we really do we try to do a fair job of balancing, like any job, right? There's positives and negatives. And at the end of the day, though, I think both Uber and Lyft and myself, we want drivers to earn as much as possible, and we want them to, be as successful as possible and stay on the platform as long as possible. So we have a lot of similar incentives, but even though, I'm sure there's some people at Uber who don't like what we always write. And I think while I was on stage with the CEO, he sort of made a joke that he saw one of my articles that said the reasons why you should drive for Lyft, and he was not happy about it. But
but you also wrote an article about reasons you should drive for Uber.
Yeah, so we had a cool series where we did, one of our contributors basically talked about all the reasons why you should drive for Uber, and then another contributor sort of fought back and wrote the next article on all the reasons why you should drive for Lyft. So, definitely try to be balanced and fair, but at the same time, kind of the drivers are my audience, and that's really kind of who I care about most because, I think it's fun to support the underdog. Uber and Lyft have some really smart people working at these companies. A lot of these drivers, though, they're just trying to trying to make a buck and pay some bills. So I like being on their side.
Yeah, I mean, and that's likely a huge reason why people follow you and they share the site and they come to you for advice and they know they can get an honest look at things. I love that a lot. We always try to kind of please everybody, and in doing so, we actually aren't the best resource possible. So wonderful job on that. I asked you in the Tesla, and you can watch this in the video in the show notes. I asked you what was your favorite experience as an Uber driver, and you told this really cool story about an old guy that you picked up once. But I'd love to ask you here, what's been your favorite experience as the rideshare guy, and what you do to help other rideshare drivers?
Yeah, I would say that my favorite experience as the rideshare guy, I don't know if there's one thing that I could point to, but I think definitely, I like that my business, even though it's sort of content based, I never would have guessed that people would have been so thankful for content, I guess is the way to put it. And, for the first 2 to 3 years of my site, I actually responded to every single email that I got. We were getting hundreds of thousands of page views at the time, and I was still responding to every single email that I got. Now I have one of my team members who actually helps me with that, but it was sort of, and it wasn't something that I had to do, but it was kind of just, I looked out and saw that, all right, Uber and Lyft are sort of known for providing poor customer service to drivers, and you can't always get your questions answered. And I just didn't like that. And I kind of wanted to provide an opposite experience. And also just from the business side of things, if I wouldn't say Uber and Lyft were my competitors, but if someone goes to Uber and Lyft has a terrible customer service experience, and then they come to me and get their question answered and get a link to a YouTube video with more information, that's a much different experience. And it sort of allows me to stand out. And I would say probably a lot of my followers would tell you that I have much better customer service than Uber, a $70 billion company. And, we're not cool, working on the same scale, but I think that, it's cool where, this is a business that I've done full time now for 3 years, and I have a few employees, and, I'm obviously doing a lot behind the scenes, but at the end of the day, and, it's been very lucrative, to be frank. But it's also been a business where, we can help drivers and sort of provide value to them. And, I think I told you this in the Tesla, but it's not like I'm changing the world and doing something like, like that. But at the end of the day, I've been surprised that content is very, people get a lot of enjoyment and a lot of value out of just reading or watching videos or listening, and it's cool to help people. So it's maybe a little cheesy, but I like that. No,
everybody here who's listening knows I like cheesy, so I'm all for that for sure. Book, you have a book coming out, or it has come out by the time people listen to this. Why? Well, first of all, name of it, and why did you write it?
So the name of the book is The Rideshare Guide, not to be confused with The Rideshare Guy, but it's sort of like you would imagine, it's kind of a resource for drivers. And really, the reason why I wrote it was because I got a cold email from a publisher, and the publisher had the exact same name as my brother, Michael Campbell. And so, of course, I instantly spotted the email and said, why is my brother emailing me? He doesn't care about Uber or Lyft. But, this publisher had actually heard about my site from a driver, and he started looking around and basically saw that there was really no real book about driving for Uber and Lyft. There's been some self-published titles and some stories and things like that, but nothing with the type of authority or credibility. And so for me, it was kind of cool. This publisher had come to me, and, of course, like any good online marketer, I've been thinking about creating an ebook or creating my own book for quite some time, but frankly, it just wasn't at the top of my list. And when he reached out to me and we sort of started going over the details, it just seemed like one of the things that I really liked about the book idea and going through a traditional publisher is that it seemed like a good way to reach a new audience that might not be online, that might not be in Facebook groups, that may not be searching on Google, that may not be, on YouTube, right? And so that was really kind of the impetus for writing the book and kind of why I wanted to go with a regular publisher for it.
And it'll be in Barnes & Noble and on Amazon?
Yeah, so it should be Barnes & Noble, Amazon. I've already seen it on a bunch of online retailers like Target and Walmart and all those types of stores. So yeah, it's really kind of a guide. I built it sort of, I over the past, I guess, 4 years, I've written hundreds of articles, hundreds of videos, maybe thousands of articles, to be honest, hundreds of videos. And, I think we're up to 70 or 75 podcasts. So I have a lot of information and knowledge about what it's like to drive for Uber and Lyft, but there was sort of not a great repository for all of that. The course was a couple years old, and so it's a little bit dated. And so with the book, I kind of made it into something that was kind of like A to Z. If you want to, the first chapter, I believe is about, like what you need, the requirements for driving for Uber and Lyft. Should you pick Uber or Lyft, for example, right? All the questions that are really the most common things we get. And so you could imagine that if you're a new driver, you can kind of start at the beginning and go beginning to end. Or if you're a more experienced driver, you might like chapter 5, where we talk about all the best strategies to make more money while driving. So that's sort of the way I set up the book. And along the way, kind of included some cool stories and anecdotes from influencers in the space. There's a couple big rideshare YouTubers and people like that. And then just interesting stories that I've come across to kind of keep things interesting and exciting.
That's really cool. Well, congratulations on the new book. We'll definitely link to it in the show notes. I have a couple random questions I'd like to ask you. Kind of actually going back to questions I wish I'd asked yesterday when we filmed in the Tesla for the series. Are you allowed to, as an Uber driver, share with your passengers other business opportunities? Like you had just mentioned, this is what's triggering it. I had a person who picked me up. I can't remember if it was an Uber or Lyft because I take both. Yeah. And the person as I was leaving, gave me his card and was like, hey, if you need some air conditioning,
nice,
I can do air conditioning for you. And I was like, oh, well, thanks. And I didn't need air conditioning, but it was just a really interesting thing. I never had put 2 and 2 together there that, I could potentially use that as an opportunity to sell things. Or could I sell swag? Hey, welcome to San Diego. I just picked it from the airport. By the way, do you need a shot glass? Do you need a hat? Do you need pencils? Are you allowed to do that or no?
Yeah, so one of the cool things is that you're actually an independent contractor working for Uber or Lyft, so you can work for multiple companies. You will have to file a Schedule C on your taxes, and technically you're a business owner. So there's obviously some extra additional paperwork that I like to say that comes with that. But because you're an independent contractor, you can pretty much do anything like that. And actually in my book towards the end, we feature a couple cool stories of drivers who, I think we feature one who's a masseuse, and, she's doing Uber and Lyft, but also, when it comes up, when a passenger says, what do you do? She says, oh, I'm a masseuse. And you can imagine that leads to a lot of clients around Christmas time. I know she did gift certificates, which was kind of a cool gift. Another guy, wow. I actually interviewed a guy on my podcast who was, I want to say he was a beet farmer because I love The Office and Dwight's a beet farmer, but I don't think he was a beet farmer. He was some type of farmer, and he would actually sell his produce out of his trunk to his Uber and Lyft passengers. Kind of.
That doesn't, I don't know how I feel about that. But I guess, it's not related to Uber then. It's just they happen to be right. And I think, and that's why it's kind of cool because you sort of learn some of the tactics of selling, right? If someone gets in the car and you say, hey, do you want to buy my produce? Obviously, probably not going to close that deal, but maybe there's other more subtle ways, and so I think what he did was he would actually leave a few samples on his dashboard. And I've seen this, there's a kind of a famous story of a guy who sold jewelry, and he would leave a bunch of samples of jewelry on his dash. And he would that would encourage people to ask about it. Say, hey, why do you have all these pieces of jewelry on your dash? And he says, oh, in my spare time, I sell jewelry and I create custom pieces. And he drove Uber Select, which is the mid-level kind of Uber where, you kind of request a ride and you can get a Lexus or a BMW. So sort of think, not like posh VIP clients, but a little bit nicer. And so this was kind of his target audience. So there's definitely a lot of, that's the stuff that I think is really cool. And, a lot of drivers, they just kind of want to go out there and drive and make their money. But there's some really cool opportunities. One of the companies that I'm an advisor for is called Maestro. And he actually came up with the idea to build an app that allows you to drive for both Uber and Lyft at the same time. This guy was a driver, and he found his first investor that cut him his first check while driving for Uber in San Francisco. What? That is an awesome story.
Pretty cool, huh? So, and like I said, that's not going to be the typical scenario or the typical situation. But if you're sort of looking for these opportunities, right, you might think to yourself, you might go read an article or you might have heard that I say you can make $15-16 an hour driving for Uber. And maybe you make more than that in your day job. But I still almost say that, it might still be a good opportunity because a lot of those side benefits, maybe you have a business that you're working on and you end up meeting your co-founder, right? I've talked to some Uber and Lyft drivers that were looking for jobs in tech in San Francisco, and they went out and hung out at all the companies that they were trying to get hired at. And around 5, 6, 7 o'clock, when all these, for example, Google employees were headed home and they were calling Uber and Lyfts, they were right there waiting to give them rides and, trying to get into the company that way as opposed to just submitting a resume online.
That's awesome. One idea that popped into my head, it was, I often tell people to go and when they have a business idea, talk to other people about it.
Yeah.
And sometimes, even in one of my courses, I say, go to Starbucks, buy a coffee for the person behind you, and then just tell them about your idea. You're not selling them anything. Yeah. It's okay. You're going to get some amazing feedback, and you never know what those relationships could potentially lead to. If anything, you're getting at least a reaction to your idea, which is really important to understand what to do next. And I was imagining, what if I just had an idea and I wanted to see what people thought about it? I'll drive for Uber and just pitch it to every single person who comes in. I'm getting paid to validate my ideas.
Yeah.
So even if the idea doesn't work, at least I'm actually putting it out there, but I'm also making some money on the side at the same time.
Yeah, and I think that's a cool thing. Obviously, I'm a little biased because the more Uber and Lyft drivers out there, the better for me probably. But I think that everyone, there's opportunity for anyone and everyone to at least try it and see if it's a good fit. And that's a nice thing. When I first signed up, as long as you have an eligible car, in a lot of cities, it's 2002 or newer, 4 doors, and all you have to do is pass a background check and have a smartphone. So you can imagine that from day, it's cool because from day one, you can actually be making money, right? It was months before I ever made my first dollar on the rideshare guy. But with Uber, for example, from day one, on your first ride, you're making money and, you have a business and you can kind of learn from that.
That's cool, man. Harry, man, thank you so much for coming on and sharing your story with us and how you did it, how you did what you did and the evolution of it. This is so exciting. So the rideshareguy.com is where you go. The Rideshare Guide is the name of the book. Is there anywhere else people should go to see what you're up to?
Yeah, no, I think we're on YouTube, and we also have a podcast, The Rideshare Guy, where I basically interview interesting people, drivers, people in the industry, academics, so and then people from Uber and Lyft. So lots of interesting interviews happening over there. But really, anyone who's kind of interested in that transportation, mobility, obviously that's our focus. But we cover lots of different topics. So anything that is interesting and exciting, basically.
I love it, man. Hey, thank you so much. We appreciate you, Harry, and all the best of luck to you in the future.
Great. Thanks for having me on. I really appreciate it.
All right. I hope you enjoyed that interview with Harry Campbell from the rideshareguy.com. Pick up his book if you want to check that out. You can also find him on YouTube as well. Now, of course, you can get the show notes and all the links mentioned in this particular episode at smartpassiveincome.com/session322. Once again, that's smartpassiveincome.com/session322. And then finally, whether you're on the show notes page or you just want to go there right now, I need to give a big shout out to ConvertKit, which is an email service provider that's just kicking butt right now because they are on top of all the things. A lot of you heard about the recent GDPR stuff. Well, they were some of the first ones to come out with information about how to stay on top of all that stuff. And I'm an advisor for the company. And because of that, I have some special connections there, and I'm able to get you a deal that you cannot get anywhere else. You can get a 45-day free trial to ConvertKit. That is my affiliate link that I'm about to give you my affiliate link, but that means I get a commission if you go through that, if you stick around after 45 days, but that's enough time to see how great this tool is to help you get your email list up and running and using all the automation features that I love, like tagging and segmenting, so I can send emails that make sense to those specific people on my email list that those emails are perfect for. So if you want to get the 45-day free trial, all you have to do is go to smartpassiveincome.com/convertkit45. Once again, that's smartpassiveincome.com/convertkit45. Cheers. Thanks again. I appreciate you for listening in, and I look forward to serving you next week on the Smart Passive Income Podcast. My name is Pat Flynn, here to help you make more money, save more time, and help more people too. Make sure you click that subscribe button if you haven't done so already, and I'll see you next week. Bye.
Thanks for listening to the Smart Passive Income Podcast at www.smartpassiveincome.com.
Have you dreamt about being your own boss, but still haven't made the first steps to making that dream a reality? Well, I get that. Starting a business can feel super overwhelming with legal forms, paperwork, finances. It's a lot. And that's why I'm excited to tell you about Taylor Brands. Taylor is a complete business builder designed to make launching your business simple and stress-free. You can register your LLC in just minutes, keeping your personal assets and the business assets separate from day one. From there, you get access to everything you need to get off the ground: legal documents, licenses and permits, invoicing and bookkeeping tools, and even a 100-day business coaching program, all designed to help you hit the ground running. You'll also get a free personalized business plan, branding tools, and so much more. And of course, listeners of this show get an exclusive 35% discount to get started. All you have to do is head to tailorbrands.com/SPI. That's TAILORBRANDS.com/SPI. Stop dreaming, start building with Tailor Brands. Look, I get it. You want to grow your business, but trying to sell to hundreds or even thousands of people gets very exhausting very fast. But what if you could sell at scale with a simple, powerful quiz? Score App helps you sell to more people without adding more to your plate. You build a quiz or assessment that your audience actually wants to take. Then they answer a few quick questions and get a personalized result right away. It shows them where they're at and what they need to do next and how you can help. And you build huge amounts of trust before you make even a single offer. No hard sell, no chasing leads, just value at scale. Get 50% off the first 3 months using the discount code SPI. All you have to do is just head to scoreapp.com/SPI. Again, that's scoreapp.com/SPI.